mommy in your head. I know Siki's smiling about his mommy. I want you to picture her in your head, and I want you to think about something that your mommy does for you that's really, really special and important to you. And if you have in your mind something that you really love about your mommy that you want to tell me, raise your hand. I'm just going to ask a couple people, but thanks for raising your hand. Avrami, what does your mommy do for you that's so special? She spends time with you. Siki, what does your mommy do?
She lets me Skype.
Oh, she does Skype calls with Siki, which is very special. And Sruli, what does your mommy love to do with you?
Go to art cafe.
Oh, she takes you to art cafe and you spend time making art together? Well, did you know the Rebbe also had a mommy? And do you think if the Rebbe was such a special, holy, important person, that his mommy was also special and important?
Yeah.
Because special people come from special mommies, right? Well, I'm going to tell you the special story about the Rebbe's mommy. His mommy's name, I know this is fancy print, is Rebbetzin Chana. Can everybody see Rebbetzin Chana? And I'm telling you this story because tonight on Shabbos, it's Rebbetzin Chana's yahrzeit, the day that she passed away from this world. But the special thing about holy people is that after they pass away, they're with us more now than they even were.
I think my mommy is named after.
So I'm going to start my story. Remember, we all agreed at the beginning of this lesson that we were only raising hands and not getting in front of everybody, right, Elchanan? Okay. Rebbetzin Chana lived a long ways away from here. I know all of you looked on this map and you saw that we're all the way in New York over here. But Rebbetzin Chana was born all the way over here in the Ukraine. Can everyone say Ukraine?
Ukraine.
She was born in a town called Nikolaev. Can everyone say Nikolaev?
Nikolaev.
I don't speak Russian, so I probably don't say it the right way. But Nikolaev was a place, a pretty medium-sized city, where there were a lot of Jews, and her father's name was Reb Meir Shlomo. Can everyone say Meir Shlomo?
Meir Shlomo.
Now, Meir Shlomo was a very special, righteous person, because we just said very special holy people have special holy children, right? And when Rebbetzin Chana was just a little girl, Reb Meir Shlomo, her father, also had 3 other children. And Rebbetzin Chana was the oldest one. How many of you are the oldest in your family? Well, the oldest have very important responsibilities, right?
And
Do you help? Raise your hand if you help your parents with all of your brothers and sisters. Do you help?
Yeah.
Do you also help clean up the house with your parents and your oldest?
10 and 6. My brother lives 4.
I love how Gedalia's being so patient
Let's
with this story. The other thing that Rebbetzin Chana did, Elchanan, was very smart. You know how you know she was so smart? Rebbetzin Chana showed everyone how smart she was because when the Rebbe Rashab, who did not live in their town, would say over a mimer, there were a lot of times that people would hear it and come back to her town of Nikolaev and they had no way to share it with the Hasidim. Do you know who would share it with the Hasidim? Rebbetzin Chana would write it down so that everybody knew what it was. Do you think it took a very smart person to be able to do that?
Yeah.
And also a person who understood Hasidus, right? Which was very special for her time. Well, Rebbetzin Chana grew up, and then it was time for her to get married. And do you know who she married? I bet you've heard of Reb Levi Yitzchak before. Do you know the Reb Levi Yitzchak library?
Yeah.
The Reb Levi Yitzchak library is named after her husband, Reb Levi. And Reb Levi Yitzchak was a very special holy person because we said holy people like the Rebbe come from what?
Holy people.
Holy people who are parents. So Reb Levi Yitzchak was the great-grandson of the Tzemach Tzedek. He came from a very, very important family. And when they were first married, they had 3 little sons. And the first son was Reb a holy person, so she had a holy son, right?
Yeah, well, she had the
When he was just a tiny baby, already she did something so special for him when he was a baby. She made him a little teeny tiny yarmulke and little tzitzis, and he wore a yarmulke from the time he was born. From the time he was a tiny baby. And she was always careful to wash Nikolasa before she nursed him. And she made sure their house had only special holy things in it, because she knew he was going to grow up and be a very special tzaddik. Well, her husband, Reb Levi Yitzchak, was the Rav of the town. And this is what their shul looked like.
Whoa,
and at that time,
I've seen it before.
At the time that he was the Rav of the shul, Rebbetzin was in the middle of a terrible war. It was called World War I. And this is their apartment building where they lived. And during World War I, lots of Jewish people lost their homes because bombs fell on them, or they had to be forced out of their towns where they lived. And they would come to Nikolaev, and do you know who would be the one to help them find a place to live and a place to eat? Who? Rebbetzin Chana. She always had her doors open. She was always feeding people and helping people and giving people advice and helping people find the right person to marry. She was an important lady of the town. And when her son, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, grew up, it was time for him to get married. And Rebbetzin Chana got on a train all by herself, and she rode all the way, far away, hundreds of miles, to meet with the Frierdiker Rebbe and say to the Frierdiker Rebbe, I have a special shidduch for your daughter. I think my son and your daughter should get married. And did the Frierdiker Rebbe say yes?
Yeah.
He said yes. And so the chasana happened in Poland. Was Poland and Ukraine the same country?
No.
And at the time, the Russian government, who ran everything and told people where they were allowed to go, said to Rebbetzin Chana and Reb Levi Yitzchak, you are not allowed to go to Poland for your children's wedding. Do you think Rebbetzin Chana was really sad not to be at her children's wedding? But she was sad, but she did not let it get her down, because do you know what she did? She invited a huge party to her house, and she made a big chasana that wasn't even there with the chassan and kala. She and her husband had 300 people for their big party to celebrate the night of the wedding, even though her very special son and daughter-in-law weren't there. The problem was, in those days, we weren't allowed to make a Jewish party in Russia, because the Russian government didn't want Jews to be Jews. They didn't want us to keep kosher or Shabbos or have chassanas or bris milas. It was dangerous to be a Jew. But do you think that Reb Levi Yitzchak and Rebbetzin Chana were afraid of the Russian government?
Of course not.
They were not afraid. In fact, do you know how I know that's true? Because the Russian government sent out a little paper to every person in their town saying, do you believe in the Eibishter? Do you believe in God? And they asked everybody because they wanted people who said yes, they were going to get them into trouble and take them to prison. So Reb Levi Yitzchak got up in shul on Shabbos, and he said, if you believe in God, you need to write yes. You don't be afraid of the Russian government. Hashem will protect you. And he made the Jews feel proud to be Jews. But do you think the Russian government eventually got upset?
Yeah, of course.
They got so upset, especially because one year Reb Levi Yitzchak baked matzahs for the whole entire Jewish community, and the matzah making started coming into the police headquarters. The head guy started saying, what? This Jew's making matzahs right under our noses. We will not let him do that anymore. He's getting all the Jews to be Jewish. So they came one night knocking on the door. Open up. And they came into the house, and they told Reb Levi Yitzchak, you're under arrest. And they had all the special starim that belonged to Reb Levi Yitzchak, including beautiful things that the Alter Rebbe wrote with his own hands. They ended up taking it all away.
And mommy said, take me instead of him.
That's that's right. Well, there was a woman there that worked for them that got up. Her name was Rachel, and she said, you could take me instead of them. But did they want to take someone else? They wanted to make an example of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. So they took him to prison. And this was a picture of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak when he was first arrested. That was the picture they took of him. It's one of the only pictures that we have of him.
And he wore dirty clothing.
The worst part of being in prison is that Rebbetzin Chana for 8 months had no idea where her husband was. She didn't know what prison he was in. She didn't know if he was healthy or if everything was okay with him. But every day she would go to the police station and say, where's my husband? And they would say, oh, he's fine. He's eating the food. He's healthy. And she'd say, I wouldn't eat your food. It's not kosher. And they'd say, he's fine. But was he really fine?
No.
They were torturing him. They were keeping food from him and making him be in a dark, dark prison cell all by himself.
No, he wasn't scared.
And he was only putting his trust in Hashem that everything would work out.
He wasn't scared. I know this.
And after 8 months, Rebbetzin Chana finally heard that Rebbe Levi Yitzchak was going to have to go far, far away to a town in Kazakhstan, which is all the way here. It was a town called Chili. Chili. It's Chili. Chili. So Chili was a place where there were no Jews. And no one spoke the same language as them. And there were no shuls, and there were no kosher food, and there was no mikvah, there was nothing. And Rebbe Levi Yitzchak got on a train for a whole month. It took a month to get there. And it was freezing cold in the train. And there was no water the whole month. The only 2 times Rebbe Levi Yitzchak got water, do you know what he used his water for?
Knucklebusser.
He didn't even drink it. He used it to wash his hands. That's how special and holy he was. And finally, when he got there, he had no home. He just had a coat with no food. And Rebbetzin Chana was so brave, she got on a train all by herself and rode all the way to Kazakhstan to save her husband.
Hey, you forgot?
And when she got there,
You
she brought some of his Svarim with her, and then she got a notebook.
forgot
And
to
she got a little tiny bit of ink.
You forgot to move the person.
I moved the person to Kazakhstan, and she brought his Svarim and a little bit of ink, and Rebbe Levi Yitzchak was finally able, after a whole entire year, to write down all of the Torahs that he was thinking in his mind when he was in prison, and he had to write it on the very edges of his books because he had no paper. There was no way to make paper in Kazakhstan. It was so cold, the ground was frozen. And when he ran out of ink, his wife, Rebbetzin Chana, went and made ink out of berries and herbs and other things so that he would be able to write. And he didn't have any Hasidim to farbring with after he made a farbringen, or after he made a mimer, so who did he farbring with? Rebbetzin Chana, she was the only one, there were no Jews there. Finally, after 5 long years of very little food and very little things, in order to be able to take care of themselves, the 5 years were over. And Rebbetzin Chana and Rebbe Levi Yitzchak moved again, and this time they moved to Ala Ata, another place in Kazakhstan, where there were some Jews who wanted Rebbe Levi Yitzchak to be their rabbi. But the only food, they were very, very, very poor, these Jews. The only food and money they had, they would donate a little bit to Rebbetzin Chana and Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, but that's all they had. Just enough for Shabbos and a little bit for meals. And Rebbe Levi Yitzchak was very sick by then because he had been living in a very, very poor, hard place for a long time. And so, there was a time that he finally passed away. That was 4 months after they moved to Ala Ata.
How old was he? How old was he?
When he passed away, he was 79, I think. Something around 79. I'll look up the answer to your question, Benny, just to make sure that I tell you the right thing.
I knew it was 79.
So he passed away, and finally, I'm getting to the happy part of our story, because we were in a sad part of the story a second ago. The happy part of the story is that even though Rebbetzin Chana was all alone in a town in the middle of Kazakhstan with no family members and hardly any food or money, guess what happened? Hashem made a special miracle that some people were able to smuggle. Do you know what the word smuggle means?
Yeah.
To sneak out in Rebbetzin Chana from Russia right at the end of World War II. And she went all the way here to Moscow. And then she went to Poland. And then she got to Germany. And finally she ended up in Paris, France. And do you know who met her in Paris, France? Her son, the Rebbe, after 17 years, got to see his mommy again. After all that time, there's a picture of the Rebbe, and there's Rebbetzin Chana. This is like after the first day that they got to see each other again, the Rebbe came and he said over some Torah in her honor.
My mother's mom
And the Rebbetzin was so happy to see her son. He wasn't the Rebbe yet. And the Rebbe was so excited to see his mommy. And he brought her on a ship all the way to New York. Actually, right down the street, because her house that he found for her, her apartment was on President Street. And it's still there today. It looks very, very different. The building's different now. But
It's
right a block from where our school is, that's where the Rebbetzin Chana lived. And the Rebbe began to visit Rebbetzin Chana every single day. He would go to her, and sometimes he would make her tea, and he would talk with her, because he was catching up on all those years he did not get to be near his mommy. And guess what? The day that the Rebbe became the Rebbe, Rebbetzin Chana was there to see that all of the hard things and the mysterious nefesh and all the things that she did her whole life that were so, so hard became something so, so happy. Because on that day, the Rebbe, who was her son, who was meant to change the world, change all of us, came from her, and she was there to see it. Toward the end of her life, the Rebbetzin would always come on Shabbos, the 7th Saturday, she would listen to the Rebbe's talks, and she would get such nachas from the things that he was saying. And finally, at the very end of her life, she passed away on Vav Tishrei, just like tomorrow, in 1964, and she was 84 years old. A very nice and long life. And the Rebbetzin Chana was buried. Her kever was right outside where the aisle is now. Have any of you ever been there?
I didn't at the aisle.
Near Rebbetzin Chana Shtar, right? And on Vav, one second, I have one last thing to say. And on Vav Tishrei, the Rebbe would always remind Jewish women that they should do 3 important mitzvahs that relate to Rebbetzin Chana's name, because what is her name made up of? What letters? What's the first letter? Chaf. And then Nun. And then Hey. Chaf stands for Chala. Nun stands for Nida, which is having a special kosher marriage. And Hey stands for Hadlakas Nerais, which is lighting Shabbos candles. So Jewish girls and Rebbetzin Chana's merit do all of those things. Now, the follow-up to this work is that I'm going to give each one of you a chance to make a present for your mommy for Vav Tishrei. And do you know why I know your mommies will love this present?
I think that maybe you should stop for just a second and wait for everybody to move back.
I'm going to show you the present we're making for the mommies.